Among the many fights to be found in Jujutsu Kaisen, I think there are none that do a better job showing off the strengths of Jujutsu Kaisen's power system and the way Gege writes his fights more than the Dagon fight in the Shibuya Incident arc. This fight, while not my favorite, is very high up there in my personal list, and looking at the way the fight is written and the way that it functions, I find it difficult to place any other fight in the series above it in terms of almost objective quality. In my opinion, the Dagon fight is the best fight in Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm going to explain why. But before we get into that, as always, if you haven't already, definitely be sure to like and subscribe. I do Jujutsu Kaisen chapter reactions and reviews every week that we get a new chapter. And with that, let's get right into the video. For starters, this fight begins as a 3v1 of decently strong characters against a very strong character, which, generally speaking, seems to be one of the best formats for a fight in Jujutsu Kaisen. The reason for this is because we get a variety of different techniques and fighting styles going up against one overwhelming force. There's then an extra element added into this based upon the individual characters involved. Maki is someone who is generally considered to be fairly strong, but when put in combat against one of the disaster spirits and side by side against two very experienced grade 1 sorcerers, it becomes very clear just how lacking in power Maki is at that point in the story. In addition to that, Nabito's projection sorcery is one of my personal favorites in the series, albeit its explanation is incredibly confusing. However, the results of how those mechanics work are fairly simple and very cool visually, one of the reasons I can't wait for this fight to get animated. It also shows off the importance of experience and the importance of what kind of curse technique you have. Because while Dagon is very overwhelmingly powerful, Naobito has far more experience, and personally has a much more dangerous curse technique to go up against in combat. Because while Dagon is able to challenge the three of them somewhat for a time, Naobito very quickly starts to overwhelm Dagon with his strategy and his incredibly fast speed. This, of course, leads into the next very important component to this fight, the importance of domain expansions, because when Dagon uses his domain, Horizon of the Captivating Skanda, that is when the tide of the fight turns vastly in his favor. No pun intended. For starters, this showcases one of my favorite parts about domain expansions, which is the fact that they can very suddenly change the setting for a fight, as this battle instantly goes of a tropical island. It's very nice from a visual perspective, which really is visually probably the best fight of Season 2. It's just going to be so pleasing to look at. But in terms of the actual mechanics of the fight, this phase of it is so good at showing off why domains are so great as part of Jujutsu Kaisen's power system. For starters, they make it very clear as to why having a domain and why not having a domain is so important, because those who have no way to defend themselves against Dagon's sure hit effect are almost immediately taken out of the picture for the fight. The only one who's able to stand their ground, really, at this point is Naobito, because of his anti-domain technique with Falling Blossom Emotion. However, having an anti-domain technique does not guarantee your ability to survive in a domain battle. It simply buys you time, and sometimes that time is not enough, as another important component of this section of the battle is the importance of decision-making on the part of the domain caster. Dagon makes both some good and bad decisions when using their domain. They made a good decision in immediately focusing greatly on Nanami and Naobito, and when he saw that his sure-hit effect wasn't able to hit Nobito, he relied upon the obstruction of Nobito's vision with his Death Swarm to rush in, take him out with a physical blow, and interrupt Falling Blossom emotion, allowing the sure-hit effect to land on him once again. However, he also makes some rather poor decisions, notably underestimating Maki. He didn't view Maki as a threat, and that allowed her to survive long enough for Megumi to enter the fray and give her Floating Cloud, which then allowed her to stand amongst the others as a serious combatant in the battle. Speaking of Megumi, this is where we get into an extended domain clash, which we really haven't had much of for most of the series. Honestly, having a prolonged battle within a domain is something that hasn't really happened in the series. A deciding moment for a fight in Jujutsu Kaisen, simply because they're just so lethal. This is the only instance of a battle, and that's largely due to Megumi's arrival and his domain interrupting Dagon's sure-hit effect against everyone. I especially like this because it goes to show that even though Megumi's domain is incomplete, that doesn't mean that it's useless. Pretty much anything a person can do within the power system of Jujutsu Kaisen has value. There are very few things that have no worth whatsoever, even if their use is incredibly circumstantial. Now, Megumi's presence allows the battle to continue on long enough for our protagonists to attempt to escape, but they're interrupted by the arrival of a certain resurrected favorite of Gege's, Toji Fushiguro. Now, at this point, there's really not too much more analysis I can do of the fight as I've been doing previously. I suppose the deepest analysis I could give is the importance of not underestimating your foe, and not overestimating yourself, as Dagon pays no real concern to Toji due to his utter lack of cursed energy. And Dagon pays very dearly for this. You could argue that this is another example of Dagon's lack of experience as a combatant coming back to bite them pretty badly. Honestly, the whole rest of this fight once Toji shows up is just a hype fest. It's just him doing incredibly impressive and very entertaining physical feats against a character who spent the last several chapters giving a number of fairly powerful characters a hard time. It's great. Also, fun fact, Toji's entrance into the fight was the chapter I originally caught up to Jujutsu Kaisen on, so it has a little bit of extra significance to me because of that. But with that is pretty much all I have to say about this fight. I hope I was able to somewhat coherently put into words why I think this fight stands as a shining example for why Jujutsu Kaisen fights are just so entertaining. They're so satisfying to read, and I think it's largely a contributing factor as to why Jujutsu Kaisen has become as popular as it is today. But if you guys enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any of my uploads. As mentioned earlier, I do Jujutsu Kaisen chapter reactions and reviews. Every week we get a new chapter. If you're a manga reader, I'm going to assume you are if you're watching this video. If you're not, or if you are, I intend to do reviews for the episodes of Season 2 that are coming out, though we're going to have a big break because they're having a month-long break between Hidden Inventory and Shibuya for some reason. I don't know why. But, you know, those will come out when the episodes come out. If you enjoy discussing Jujutsu Kaisen with other people, or you just enjoy the content I produce on this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to that down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Take care.